In today's video, I will be showing you how I removed my intake manifold on my small block Chevy engine while it was still in the vehicle. Please like and subscribe to the video so I know to post more future content. Enjoy the video. Carburetor has 4 bolts that need to be removed. There's 2 front long bolts that have to be removed and 2 short bolts in the rear that also have to be removed. Right here I'm removing the front 2 first, as you can see, and then I'll move to the back to remove the rear. Alright, once you have all the bolts removed from the carburetor, the only thing that's left to remove are the vacuum lines and the throttle linkage. And I believe there's 1 big vacuum line in the back and 2 vacuum lines up front, and you also have to remove the fuel line from the fuel pump to the carburetor. Right here, I'm taking off the front vacuum line on the carburetor, which is held on by a hose clamp. You could just use a flathead screwdriver to loosen up a clamp, and also use the flathead to pry the hose off of the carburetor. And then right here, I'm taking off the throttle linkage. It's held on by a 12mm nut and bolt, and I'm using the 12mm wrench to hold the head of the bolt, while I use the electric ratchet to take off the bolt on the end of the nut. I wish I could have got a better picture of it, but it was a hard spot to get it in. Alright, here I'm just removing the last line that's in the rear. That's a vacuum line to the carburetor. And I'm removing the electronic choke cable, and then just remove the carburetor. Alright, now we're going to remove the distributor from the intake. And right here I am removing the distributor hold down bolt, but it's actually what you use to time the advance on the distributor. But it's held on by a 9/16 bolt and a bracket, and you have to remove that bolt before you can take the distributor out. So right here, it's a real tight space to get to, so if you have a flexible head wrench, that would actually help a lot. But I'm just removing this bolt and the bracket, and then I'm going to take the distributor out. And right here, as you can see, in order to take the distributor out, you kind of have to twist it counterclockwise on the cap a little bit, and then pull it straight up, and it pops right out just like that. Okay, so now that we've taken the distributor out, now we just have to take off the upper radiator hose and the water pump bypass hose that connects to the intake manifold. And both of those are held on by clamps. So once again, just get you a flathead screwdriver, loosen up the clamp. And if it's been on there for a long time, you might have to use a screwdriver to pry it from the thermostat housing, or you might be able to just pull it off. But right here, you just take off the clamp, for the water bypass hose. I kind of got a lot of wires in the way, so I'm making way to get to the hose itself. But you just loosen up the clamp, and then you might have to pry it off to get some space off of the housing, and then it just should come right off. Now I'm removing the intake manifold bolts. If you can, go ahead and clean the intake manifold, because I had a hard time due to so much oil and gunk being on the intake manifold. I could not see some of the bolts. There's 12 bolts in total, and you'll have to remove the power steering and the alternator bracket in order to get the front two bolts. Here I'm just removing the AC compressor bracket. All you gotta do is remove the nut that's in the front and have a 9/16 socket to remove the bolt in the back. Alright, so here I'm removing the alternator housing bracket, and you just have to remove this bolt right here that's above the water pump. There should be a nut on the back end of it, but just make sure you guys have the battery disconnected from both the negative and positive terminals before you mess with the alternator. And you'll have to unhook the voltage regulator from the back of the alternator. And you will also have to unhook the two bolts that hold the alternator onto the bracket, and then you should be able to just disconnect the bracket off of the intake manifold. Alright guys, so right here, when you get to this part, if you're using a pry bar to get the intake off, as you see it move, if you see it move and it's still hard to get off, you probably have a bolt that you did not see. There's a bolt to the left side of this intake right here that is so much dirt and grime, I did not see it. So you will see me struggle and pry to get this thing off. But make sure you have all 12 bolts out of the intake manifold. So after some extra light, I was able to see the bolt on the other side of the intake. And then once you take all the bolts out, you should be able to pull up on the intake just like that with your hands. If you still have the OE intake like I do right here, that thing is pretty heavy, so be careful when you're pulling it out. And then as you'll see, got all the bolts out, and you'll be able to pull it right on out. And that's all it is to take the intake out.